turning the clock back to the days of Churchill and the war. The Second World War left its imprints all over London. Blitzed out buildings, air raid shelters and gun emplacements. But many of them have disappeared as new buildings go up and old ones come down. But if you know where to look, there are still some wartime survivors hanging on in the most unlikely places. Like Neasden in North London. They're supposed to be somewhere around here. It's not one of these terraced houses, surely. The place I've come to see is difficult to find, but there's a good reason for that. Aha, mind your heads, this is it. This door marks the entrance to one of London's best-kept wartime secrets. But before we have a look around, let me take you back to those dark days just before the outbreak of war. As the capital braced itself for conflict, Londoners set to work, preparing for the threat of air raids. The government decided to build an underground bunker in Whitehall known as the Cabinet War Rooms. This would serve as Churchill's HQ if official buildings were destroyed by bombing. But even the Cabinet War Rooms wouldn't have survived a direct hit. So a second bunker was built, at Neasden in North London. Its code name was Paddock. From the street, the only evidence that Paddock exists is this metal door. But once you're inside, a whole hidden world opens up before you. To guide me through the maze of passageways, I've enlisted an expert guide. Nick Catford's had a long love affair with underground places like this. I say, Nick, this is an amazingly atmospheric old place.
Oh, it certainly is. This is actually the point where we enter the bunker proper. We're going through an airlock now. You can see the thickness of the walls, because the bunker had to be totally self-sufficient. If there was a gas attack, it had to be totally sealed so that everybody down here could be completely safe and able to fulfill their function.
Wow, Nick, this is quite a size. For a building that you wouldn't expect to see under the suburban streets of Neasden.
It surprises everybody. The thing is about this bunker, nobody knew it was being built. Work started in 1939. It took 18 months to build, but it was built at night on an existing government site. This was the site of the Post Office Research Station. They were doing government work, so nobody asked what was going on. And if you asked in those days, it was certainly bad news. Even the king...
Careless words cost lives.
Indeed they did. Even the king didn't know that this bunker was being built until it was completed. It's amazing.
Yeah. And what have been going on in the rooms we're passing?
Well, unfortunately, records haven't been kept, so we don't know what went on in many of these offices, but I can tell you that hatch there, that goes to the kitchen.
I say. 2 teas and a Chelsea bun, please. The kitchen was on the upper level of the bunker, but the really important work went on much deeper than that.
Oh, I don't like it.
Yeah, this really is getting subterranean now.
Well, the point is that at this level we were supposed to be able to withstand the largest high explosive bomb that the Germans could do in 1940. Right, at this point we're 40 feet below ground.
So, I should have brought my flippers.
Turn to your left there. And you see before you the generator room. The bunker was totally self-sufficient. That was the whole point of it, totally self-sufficient. So if the main supply was lost, then it still had to be able to operate. So we've got the diesel generator here, we've got the controls for the generator.
Looks a bit like something you see in one of those old science fiction movies. Yeah.
Everything in this room is the original plant when the bunker was built. Through here is the military hub of the bunker. This is the reason the bunker existed. This is the military control room, operations room, map room, call it what you like. There would have been maps on the walls here. You'll notice these fluorescent fittings. Now, fluorescent lighting was around in the 30s, but these shades angle the light onto these maps. And this is where the war in Europe, the war would have been run from this room.
Those lovely girls with a big map of Europe pushing boats and
that's
tanks
exactly.
and all that. Yeah.
You normally think of a map table with people with pushing tanks around on sticks and a gallery overlooking. That's the equivalent room here.
And what's this? I've noticed the only room that has any windows.
Well, instead of the gallery, this room actually has offices overlooking the map room through windows, actually on the same level. So we've got 3 rooms, one for the Admiralty, one for the Army, and one for the Air Ministry, looking into the map room.
No photographs survive of Paddock during the war, but these pictures of its twin, the Cabinet War Rooms, show what it must have looked like. Next door to the map room was the place where Churchill would have met with his closest colleagues.
That small room through there is where Churchill would have broadcast to the nation had it been needed, but this is the main government hub of the bunker. This is the Cabinet Office. This is where the War Cabinet would have met. There would have been a big oval table. Churchill would have sat in the middle, about here. In fact, he only came once to this bunker. He chaired one Cabinet meeting on the 3rd of October 1940 for the sole purpose of proving that the bunker was able to fulfil its function.
Churchill later recorded the events of the day in his memoirs. We held a cabinet meeting at Paddock, far from the light of day, and each minister was required to inspect and satisfy himself about his sleeping and working apartments. We celebrated this occasion with a vivacious luncheon, and then we returned to Whitehall. It would be Churchill's one and only visit to this extraordinary place.
He wanted to stay in central London, so this bunker only remained operational for 3 years. In 1943, a new standby Cabinet War Room was opened in South West 1 in Marsham Street. Paddock was abandoned, the government moved back to South West 1, and this bunker was forgotten.
But that one doesn't. That still doesn't exist.
That one, unfortunately, under the Home Office building, was demolished 3 years ago, so that's gone.
Paddock hasn't quite disappeared like Marsham Street, but in the years since the end of the war, it's slowly decayed. What do you do with a huge underground bunker in Neasden? But I'm glad I've had the chance to walk through these deserted corridors of power and follow in the footsteps of the great man himself, even if Churchill did only make one visit.
Well, you can understand why Winston didn't exactly love the place. It's cold, it's damp, and it's really rather gloomy. But had things turned out differently, this would have been the very place that Winston and his generals would have been planning out the final days of the war. It's an amazing piece of our wartime history, a huge underground white elephant slumbering beneath the streets of Neasden.
Not all of London's wartime secrets are buried beneath the streets.